OK, just talk to me a little bit about this. What can people expect? Because obviously last time, a crushing blow for space enthusiasts everywhere.
It was. What they can expect is much of the same, really. You'll have the same style of countdown going on. All the same procedures will take place, which everybody watched with great eagerness over a few hours, with the fueling of the rocket itself. With the you can see there on the image there, you can see the boiling off of liquid oxygen as they top up the tanks, and going through the same procedure again that everybody watched. Only hopefully this time it should work quite well. The problem which occurred last time was something they hoped to have tested on one of what's called the wet test, which is where you fuel the whole rocket up, and the only thing you don't do is launch it. That's just the one thing you don't do. And that was the hope that they could get the rocket tested this time. But the test they wanted to do was to check out whether or not they could actually cool all the engines. I use a model here to demonstrate, which is probably going to be easier. At the back end here, you have 4 engines, and you have to cool these down to stop the shock of the engines firing. So they have to be the same temperature. One of the engines, unfortunately, the cooling temperature didn't reach the correct level, and therefore you had to abort the launch. As it turned out, the only thing that was actually faulty was actually a temperature sensor after all that. So that's great, because that means it was a low category fix, something that could be sought. They either replaced the sensor or they recalibrated. And so therefore we should see the launch go ahead. And if that goes well, then we'll see the first launch of what's called the SLS system, which is the principal launch system for the Artemis mission. This is Artemis 1, where the capsule, Orion, uncrewed in this particular case, it has 3 dummies on board, which I've got sensors on board to simulate passengers, to see what stresses are on them, what radiation levels they take. And this will actually orbit the moon for quite a period of time. It could be up to 42 days this mission could take. And it's also launching 3 satellites, 3 CubeSats, one of which is going to land on the surface, a Japanese rover. One is going to have a solar sail, which uses pressure of light to take it towards an asteroid. And another one will orbit the moon, taking measurements and looking for a possibility of water. And then the capsule will come back, and they'll test then the re-entry system on the capsule, ready for recovery. And it'll take about a year or so to evaluate everything, to make sure everything worked perfectly. And if it does, then we can see in 2024 the first human launch to the moon since the Apollo days, where crew members will be taken on an orbit about the moon, very similar to the Apollo 8 mission that took place in 1968. And then, hopefully, a year later, the first lunar landing in 50-odd years.
This is it. So, Andrew, it's a perfect point for me to interject here. Firstly, you said that on this particular journey, there's going to be 3 dummies. They could put me in there and then there'd be 4. But have we actually really made a massive progression? Because you just said there we're going to be doing something, we're testing to see if we can do something that we did decades ago. I mean, space... No, I'm wrong. He's back involved. What's going on? Come on.
Yeah, we did it before with the Saturn V. This is the first time the SLS system has been launched. So you have to test the whole system of the SLS to make sure it works. It's a different piece of engineering entirely. The technology is very different for starters, which is being used. So yes, and it's a brand new capsule. The capsule is very different from the Apollo capsule, very different indeed. And so therefore you do have to try these things out rather than risking killing the astronauts on the mission. So that's why you do an all-up engineering test, to make sure everything works, to actually really safeguard the astronauts themselves. And that's why you actually do a test like this. So that's why this is a test mission. Otherwise, we are, from a physics point of view, doing something very similar, but from an engineering point of view, much of it is very different and very new.